Hey guys, this is Dave with Gazaudio, and this is the FIIO K11 desktop headphone DAC amp combo. And I've reviewed a lot of DAC amp combos over the last couple of years, but the vast majority of them have been portable. So USB dongle style DAC amps, or DAPs, with only a handful of them being designed primarily for desktop usage, like the FIIO K7, the SMSL D12, or the FIIO. So what makes the FIIO K11 unique, and what does it offer that a typical budget or even an entry-level desktop stack does not? Well, those are the questions I want to try and answer. We have a lot to unpack, so let's get into this. So the K11 is FIIO's latest release in the K series lineup and is preceded by the K9, K9 Pro, K7, and K5 Pro, also the K3. It's not the smallest of the K series. The K3, I believe, is the smallest, but it is much smaller than the K5 Pro, K7, and K9. It's also less expensive, coming in at $129. As for what's included in the box, we have the K11, of course. It also includes a power adapter and cable, a USB Type-C, and a 6.35 headphone adapter. On the front of the K11, we have a 6.35 single-ended headphone output and a 4.4 balanced output. It also has a high contrast VA display and then a multi-function volume wheel that also doubles as a power and selector knob. On the back, we have a 12-volt power input, a USB Type-C input, and an optical input. We then have a coaxial digital input/output and a set of analog RCA outputs. And then finally on the top we have an adjustable RGB FIIO logo that also indicates the sample rate of the audio signal. As for the build and design, it has an alloy body. It's not too heavy, but it's heavy enough to sit securely on a desk. And what's cool is it actually has a large rubber pad on the bottom that helps to keep it from sliding around. The design is also very nice, especially for this price point. It's available in two colors, black and silver. And again, the large RGB FIIO logo on the top looks great, and combined with the rounded edges, it just makes for a very clean and sleek aesthetic. On the inside, it uses a CS43198 DAC chip and can decode up to 32-bit PCM and DSD256. It puts out an impressive 1400 milliwatts at 32 ohms out of the 4.4 output. However, that does drop down to 250 milliwatts at 300 ohms. And then out of the single-ended 6.35 millimeter output, it gives you about 520 milliwatts at 32 ohms, and then that drops down to 59 milliwatts at 300 ohms. And then finally, you can power the device on and off by long pressing the multi-function volume wheel. The volume wheel also gives you access to the internal menu that allows you to select your inputs, change your gain levels, and choose from 6 different sound filters. You can also change the screen brightness and screen timeout, and then finally it allows you to choose between 8 different RGB colors and also change the pulsing mode of the FIIO logo. Okay, let's move on to the sound. Okay, so let's talk about the sound of the FIIO K11. So of course, this is what I would consider to be an entry-level desktop DAC amp, just so that we set our expectations accordingly. But it did actually exceed my expectations, and it even exceeded them in terms of the power output of the 4.4 balanced output. Now, I don't have many DAC amp combos that are specifically for desktop usage in this price range right now. And aside from my K7, my D12, FIIO, and some of my older stuff like the Zen DAC 2, most of my desktop stuff is a little more expensive, and they are DAC amp stacks or something that's considered kind of desktop or for portable usage like the XD05 Pro. Now, I do have the E32 and the L32 stack, but even those are about $250 for both. Point being, even though I don't have a desktop equivalent in this exact price range, I still feel like I was able to accurately assess where this lands in terms of its overall performance and value. We'll talk about the K11's power output first, because that's one thing that kind of caught my attention right away when I was reading the specs, because I don't know of many devices that can put out this much power at 32 ohms in this price range. And again, we are talking 1400 milliwatts out of the 4.4 balanced output, which is pretty impressive. And then it gives you 520 milliwatts out of the single-ended output, which isn't that bad either. Now, that power output does drop substantially if you plug a 300 or 350 ohm headphone into the K11, like an HD650 or the 350 ohm FT3. Out of the 4.4 balanced output, it drops down to 250 milliwatts at 300 ohms, and then down to 59 milliwatts at 300 ohms out of the 6.35 output. So if you do have some higher impedance, harder to drive headphones, you may want to take that into consideration. However, if you don't have any super hard to drive headphones, again, you should be just fine. And if you have a 32 ohm headphone, even with maybe a little bit of a lower sensitivity, you're still going to be just fine, especially if you're using the 4.4 output. And of course, this has more than enough power to power any IEM out of either output. Now, as far as its overall sound presentation, I would say it's basically linear and even leans maybe ever so slightly clinical. So if you have an IEM or headphone that is already maybe on the thinner sounding side, this is only going to accentuate that characteristic. So basically, whatever the signature of your IEM or headphone is, you can expect this to, again, slightly affect its note weight. That being said, I don't think it's overly clinical or thinned necessarily. It still falls within the realm of staying fairly neutral and is transparent enough to keep things from sounding unnatural, which means vocals and instruments are rendered fairly accurately. And again, while they may not have as much note weight as, say, the K7 or even the D12, which actually leans a little closer to true neutral to me, I still think the K11 has enough note weight as to keep it from pushing again into the overly clinical territory. As far as detail levels, I would say it's a little better than I would have expected at this price. I still don't think it's quite to the levels of either of those, the K7 or D12. It comes pretty close, but I still think both of those are going to give me just a little more in terms of detail retrieval. And the same goes for some of my desktop stacks like the E32 and the L32 as well. And if I were to try and determine where I feel this lands in terms of its detail levels in general, I'd probably have to compare it to some of my portable devices, because again, I don't really have any desktop devices in this price range. They're all just a little more expensive, and to be honest, the K11 does fall behind them in terms of overall performance. But I do have lots of portable devices that are closer in price. I would say it's maybe comparable to the FIIO K5 or the Q11, the Hibi FC4, and maybe even a little better than some of my sub $100 dongles like the Tantrum Space or Space Lite. But here's the bottom line. In terms of pure sound performance, I would say it's very good for the price. But what makes this device such an incredible value, in my opinion, are its power output and features, because there are very few devices that I've come across that give you all of this for $129. So if you need a budget desktop solution that not only gives you analog line outputs, a USB Type-C, an optical and a coaxial digital input, plus you get both a full-size headphone output, a 4.4 output, a nice display. It decodes high bitrate audio formats and gives you plenty of power output, not to mention the build quality and design is also excellent at this price. Plus, it has this really cool RGB logo. So in terms of straight up value, again, I can't think of very many other devices out there that will give you all of this for $129, which means the FIIO K11 absolutely gets my full recommendation. So that concludes my review of the FIIO K11. If you're new to the Gazaudio channel and you like our videos, please take a minute and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go a step further with your support, we also now have a Patreon. I'll make sure and leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. Please like this video, please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.